game with swords and sticks.
Swords and sticks may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Okay.
Bam.
Hi everybody. I know we keep switching up our times, but we thought 7:45-ish might be better, I hope. I don't know. I know we posted something, so I hope you got the memo on that. If not, we're close to 8, so if you're logging in late, sorry. We just couldn't wait to get a hold of our swords.
In the general vicinity of 7:30 to 8 p.m. So we figured we'd meet you halfway there. But if you saw from the title of the episode, today at 45th Fu, we're going to talk about wrists.
I said swords, but I meant wrists.
You said swords?
I said swords, but okay, wrists, but really with swords.
Okay, I like it. Swords or wrists.
Because who doesn't love swords, right?
So show you're pretty good at flowering the sword. You can
Meh.
kind of do it again.
So yeah, so this is the flower, which isn't just wrist. There's a lot of shoulder involved, but today we're focusing on the wrist. So actually, I wish I'd grabbed a game because the double-edged sword is a lot of wrist. But even with the broadsword, which most of our students kind of start with, is the first sword that gets to hold.
That advanced.
Yeah, they weren't ready for the double-edged sword, right? So with that, even just this, sometimes we get students. I was just gonna say Oscar owes me push-ups but we're not in the temple, we're in your studio, so I guess you make the rules.
I'm just moving it out of the way.
Hi everybody, welcome to 45th Fu. I just got rained on, so it's a whole situation today with this, but Oscar's gonna talk about wrists now. I'm gonna log on to the computer if you actually have real questions for us, other than just why are we holding weapons?
You know, why are we holding weapons? So yeah, 45th Fu, this is for the grown and sexy crowd who are doing Kung Fu as well. What we find is a lot of students, young and older, are having issues with their wrists. And obviously our lifestyle, our brand new iPhone 10s that are large and make you use your thumb like this and give you wrist cramps, being on a computer, all of these things don't allow us to get the wrists to be moving the way they should. And so we wanted to kind of tackle some of those concerns, but then also translate to why you need to have your wrist mobile in order to do good Kung Fu. Now, as Mimi said, when you're doing your flowers, there is a ton of shoulder stuff, but I think that's a whole nother thing we can talk about, shoulders. Yeah. We're gonna tackle something that's a little bit smaller first to tackle, which is your wrist, and it can translate to a lot of things. So, weapons is pretty advanced actually. But initially with your Kung Fu, you need to have good hand positioning. When you're doing straight leg kicks, we like to show really good wrist extension. Very nice. That's a very nice line right there. And so it just looks nicer also as well. You know, sometimes we have people do straight leg kicks and their hands are kind of like this. And it's almost like they're trying to like swim or something.
No, they're doing an airplane.
Right. So kind of like, that's good for keep that in clubs, right? So, but yeah, we need full wrist extension. But if you're not able to do this, and this is active control, I'm going to have Mimi demo again because it's very nice lines. Active controls of the wrist. Look at this line. And so what that means is that she's able to put that without load. Then when she loads it by doing something even as simple as a push-up, she's not going to strain the wrist. And I have clients that don't have full 90-degree wrist extension. Why would we want to then load that with a push-up? This is where we run into problems. And sometimes it doesn't manifest in the wrist. People start complaining about, when I do push-ups, my elbows hurt, my shoulders hurt, and it could be just a part where they can't even stack.
That's your joint-by-joint assessments.
Yeah. Now, would the quotes come under the joint-by-joint, or is it a full assessment?
Joint-by-joint.
Oh,
yeah, just a joint-by-joint. But also, knife-edge chops.
Knife-edge chops, yeah.
Yeah, which is technically loading, right? Because you're using force against another object.
Right, and again, and we're moving the wrist in a different direction, and that's another one where we're doing things like chops, where people don't have the ability to fully flex that wrist, and so what ends up happening is instead of being able to chop with the meaty part of the hand, they start like chopping with their fingers.
Right, and then that causes broken fingers.
Yeah, we have a student who had
Boo to broken fingers.
who was missing for a while. It turns out she had a finger injury.
Right.
Could it be because of lack of wrist mobility? Possible. Possible. I'm going to put it out there.
So what do we do, Oscar? How do we fix our wrists?
Okay. I hope you're sitting down.
They're probably sitting down.
This is
no
huge.
offense.
The one person who's watching is definitely sitting down. Okay, so listen. No offense. Don't be shocked, right? If you're standing, don't pass out. But wrist mobility exercise.
Oh my God.
Do some joint mobility
Almost
exercises.
passed out.
So here is the first step. Let's go step by step of what I want you guys to do.
We want us to do joint mobility? That's so strange. Oscar hates joint mobility. We never talk about it on this podcast ever.
First thing that you're going to do is you're going to get your forearm flat. And I think it's a little easier to start with your fingers curled, tight into a fist. For you Kung Fu people, that's better anyway. And imagine the knuckles of your fist as they're about to draw as big of a circle. We don't want to compensate here. This free hand, imagine it as my very expensive iPhone. I'm going to place it there and draw as big of a circle as I can with my wrist. So I flex my wrist, I turn towards the pinky side, I extend the wrist, and I circle back around towards the thumb side. And then make sure that we go both directions. The compensations that we see are things like this, where the forearm starts turning. So me trying to balance something. Yeah. Now this may be not wrong. Depends on where we're going here.
But no,
for
just
the purpose of
isolation.
this, yeah, we want you to be able to move the joints independently before moving them interdependently. That's the first thing that you can do, and you can do it all day, every day.
Yeah, sometimes
at a meeting with your boss. I'm just kidding. Okay, so that's
One
the first
time
thing.
you used a rock, remember, in your meeting?
Let's not segue into
Okay,
that. That's
sorry.
a long story. Okay, and then the other thing is throughout the day is to stretch your wrists. So we would want to show some extension.
Or like if you have a wall.
A wall is
that
great.
You want to get fingerprints on.
Yeah, but the thing is, if I saw you doing that, I keep doing that. I'd be like, excuse me, are you leaning on the wall? Yeah.
It looks like I'm leaning.
Leaning, yeah. So there's leaning there. But just doing things like this, stretching. I personally there's some anatomy things that if you could grab these three fingers are the ones that kind of get used a lot. So just grabbing those three and pulling a little bit, not to the point of pain, but finding, and your thumb as well. So these two and your thumb. The peace sign and the thumb. Pulling those down is a nice way to kind of stretch, especially this thumb that gets used a ton for your phone. So getting that nice little stretch there. That's a way to kind of statically do that. Now, we're going to have to discuss how the next step, which is...
Swords.
Yes. Skipping ahead.
Oh.
The next step is isometrics loading.
All right, swords later.
We can still use, because we can see this beam here. Can we see this beam? Yeah.
Yes.
I like you to use this beam. Now let's just imagine that this is a floor or a wall. A wall or a floor. If you were like this, that would be the floor, right? So, I know that's kind of crazy, right? So, here's what I would say that you can do, is that you, maybe facing this way is going to be better.
Okay.
Bam. Now, we already know that Mimi's got full 90-degree extension and maybe even a little bit more, right? But what I would want her to do is flex. Let's say you didn't. I'd be like, flex or extend that wrist as much as you can. How much can we get of that wrist extension? Okay, that's all that you got. But from there, then what I want you to do is place it on the floor, right? At that level. So which means you wouldn't be right over it. You would be backed away from it. Does that make sense to you? Do you think it's making sense to people?
Guys, is this making sense to you?
Anyone? Okay, anyone?
Basically, you're not pretending you can do a push-up.
Right, you have to back away a little bit.
You just kind of almost like at an angle.
Yes, but I do want the hand
So I would
flat.
say more like this. Like
Very
I'm
nice.
leaning.
Like you're leading. Okay, so we
Yeah.
were right the first time.
Yeah.
Now, that is your true range of motion. You haven't
Right.
loaded it. We want to build strength there. So what I would then tell Mimi to do is brace her abs, build a little bit of tension, let that tension spill over the arm and into the hand, and start pressing the hand into the ground, keeping the heel of the hand on the ground, and from the knuckles to the fingertips pressing hard into the ground. That is the progressive isometric
Like I'm
stretching.
trying to put my imprint of my hand into the ground.
Perfect. Exactly right. Like you're...
That wasn't even rehearsed, guys.
you're in the Academy Award, the Hollywood stars.
Oh yeah, I'm on the Hollywood.
But they forgot to put cement, and you're just straight up on the cement.
I'm gonna put
Right.
my
You're like,
handprint in there.
perfect. Now from there, after loading that, you're ramping up and you hold it for about 10 seconds. Then without moving the torso or the body away, you try to contract from the knuckles up and your forearms together. You're trying to close this angle. Now, we already know you have that.
Oh.
but perfect. Look, wow! Look at all the range of motion she just got just from
that one
isometric.
isometrical.
and then we would say, okay, readjust.
Oh.
And continue.
Okay. Right.
Now you're the one who usually tells me, Oscar, what you just said doesn't make sense. Would you say that made sense?
Yes, because if this were the floor, I would make sure. Okay, well, if I can't do this yet, I'm only here. Then I've got to bring my arm to where it's flat on the
Right.
floor or the wall, and that would mean this is not.
Correct.
Like I'm not trying to do a push-up per se. I'm really just trying to make sure that this is here.
Correct.
And as I do my isometric hold, then I check it and it's feeling pretty good. So then I can move it down a little more,
Yeah.
and then that gives me a better angle.
Correct. Perfect. So, and you are perfect. Okay, so now we've worked on this, but sometimes this may not be enough. Let's say you do this for a few weeks and you don't see improvement.
Yeah.
Well, that means that this kind of linear movement
Okay.
is not the main issue. We may need to work on rotation. So hopefully this will
Just
come.
wave a lot to people.
Yeah, we're going to Britain, baby. So imagine from here now that you're going to rotate without really necessarily moving the forearm. So let's see how much inversion and eversion you have, or I guess is the fancy term for it. And again, because I know Mimi already has that 90-degree angle, I know that her inversion and eversion is pretty good. So I can be pretty strict with her and just hold on here and make sure nothing moves and see how much she gets. And if it's coming across on the screen, it's not much.
I don't think it's coming across.
Um,
Basically, it's just lifting like a ankle bit.
Well, you're trying to move it as much as you can without compensating.
Right.
Right? Show
I'm not
compensation.
doing
Show the
this.
compensation. There you go. Break it down. Break down the compensation. Okay.
That's compensation. We don't want compensation.
Well, you do when you're ready to break dance, but not yet.
Yeah, I'm
You
not
gotta-
ready to break
yeah,
dance.
Okay, so
The ship sailed.
let's just do a real quick review up to where we're at.
Okay.
We've done our wrist circles. Wrist circles,
First.
controlled articular rotations of the wrist, is your assessment and your daily maintenance routine.
Okay.
So if you do this every day, you may feel better, but you're just going to kind of maintain the health of the joint, and you can also daily assess it. So day by day, say, yesterday felt good, today doesn't feel as good. Why is that? Oh, I was on my phone all day yesterday. Aha, I'm a
Or
genius.
my mouse.
Or my mouse, right. That's the first step. The second step is the isometric loading, where you're loading it progressively, pressing, and loading it regressively by trying to move in the opposite side of the joint.
Okay.
Still with us so far,
Yes,
everybody?
still
Okay.
there.
If you do that for a little bit of time, let's say consistently over the course of a couple weeks and no improvement, then maybe you need to work on rotation of the wrist, which can be a little bit challenging because it's minuscule. We don't have a lot anyway. But if you ever
Like a little fish flipper.
if you've ever
little fin.
if you ever hurt your wrist, you'll notice that you will lose movement. That rotation, you would lose that, or that'll be painful before this. You may not notice this as quickly as you would notice that, which is
Okay.
why in the reverse you'd want to improve that rotation first,
Okay.
if that was an issue. Those are 3 ways to do it. And then throughout the day, I think, is to add the stretching. This type of stretching can also be done on the floor. Every position has value. So if you're on the floor, fingers are pointing away from you. If you're on the floor, fingers are pointing towards you.
Does it matter if your fingers are spread out or
I
together?
really personally
or
like having the fingers as wide as possible, only because we're spending a lot of time
closed
here.
in.
Right. So this just feels good to kind of stretch those. So fingers pointing away from you, fingers pointing towards you, back of the hand on the floor, fingers away, fingers towards you. The hardest one is this one. Show the ring finger, you know what I'm saying, ladies? Bam! That's the hardest position if you're on the floor. But I think if you only do one, if you only stretch, you're not going to build strength.
Right.
You will get mobile. So the joint circles, most important. Second most important is the isometric loading, because you will then be able to expand that range of motion and build strength while expanding it. And then there is still value in what we call just passive stretching, which is just on the floor stretching. And then you'll be able to flower. Now swords. Bring the swords, right?
Bring in the swords.
And the truth is, so to do flowers this nicely, there is a lot of shoulder stuff. But to flower the initial flick over, which maybe you could just demo how we initially
Trying to get in both
yeah,
cameras here.
just that, you need a certain amount of wrist mobility. So if you are starting your broadsword practice and you are not able to even do that without it looking smooth, you've got a wrist issue, and we can work on that with all the stuff that we just spoke about. Probably more realistically too is you'll be working on flowers with a stick, and even though it doesn't require as much, it does require some to do things here because there's a little bit of movement. But even before the stick, if you are a Wallum practitioner, you've got to learn how to do a chop, you've got to learn how to do straight leg kicks, and you've got to learn how to do a mantis technique. And there's some people who can't even flex their wrists, so when they're doing this move, it kind of looks like this.
Yeah, that bothers us.
And it bothers us that you can't get this because the mantis hook has this kind of pulling, grabbing, tearing awesomeness. And even when you're striking here, right? This is a backhand. That's cool, fine, you know. You want to like backhand someone.
Only when you're doing a duel.
But when you're doing the mantis like hook punch, you know, that's much better to be able to.
That's a little advanced.
Right. But what I'm saying is, ignore your wrists at your own peril, right?
That's right.
Years may go by in your practice, and you're wondering, what's holding me back? And it could be your wrists.
Could be your wrists, absolutely.
That's all I got.
All right, so I did mention in the social media sphere that we might drop another hint. For those that have been following us on Instagram and Facebook and
There's a hint in this
whatever.
room. Do you want to show them that?
No, I don't want to show them that. That's too big of a hint.
Too big of a hint.
Yeah, they'll have to come to the Fit Studio. So maybe that could be the hint. The project we've been
Has to
working
do something
on.
with
Yeah, we've
it's
been working on
it here.
We have
We're
worked on
working
it here. Yeah, we
We
have worked
have
on
worked
the
on it
project
here.
here. So that is your other hint for
We worked on it here
the
and
super
there.
secret surprise. It has
It's
been
time.
worked on here. So yes.
Time.
Please follow us though. March 9 is our big reveal, and I think you're gonna like it a lot.
It's awesome. And let me just see who's watching. Jeremy Rose is watching on my side. And you're, oh nice. And Alexia's watching.
All right.
So let me just give a real quick shout out to Jeremy. I would recommend that you guys come into the studio and see all the nice, how I think things are really nice.
This hasn't fallen over yet.
This hasn't fallen over.
That's a
Jeremy
good
put that
thing.
in.
Yeah,
We've got a nice thing that's holding up some sandbags and medicine balls there. Give credit to Jeremy for doing that.
But did he do his wrist mobility today? I don't know.
No, I doubt it. Yeah. So we're gonna take a point away from that. But then he gets a point back because he put up the racks for the stuff on the wall.
Yeah, you're pretty.
But then we
generous with
take
points.
away a point because he hasn't installed the light
And he
yet.
missed advanced class this week.
We take a point away from missing advanced class. This is fun.
Oh yeah.
This is fun. We can.
All right, guys. So follow us here on all our social media, but also this is super important. You need to follow Wallum Films on YouTube because we're going to release extra stuff there. We also just had a cool podcast on Chinese New Year for those that were interested in our performances. So please follow all of those channels. I know we're asking for so much, but we're here for you
we're
every
needy
Tuesday,
also.
and we just changed to 7:45. Hopefully, it's a better time, but I don't know. If not, it's all good.
We'll change it again.
You know.
And you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it.
Bye bye.
All right.